work for the Red Cross, and I do things that are not WordPress, but they pay my bills. And I'm active in the Philadelphia Area Media Association, or PANMA. Some of you may have heard of that. If you haven't, PANMA, PANMA.org, is a wonderful organization that promotes the interest of what we call the digital development community, which would be people who make websites, do graphic art, video, anything pretty much in digital development. And we hold monthly events, pretty much, most of which are educational, and we have some real content. We did one on WordPress in May, and we've done things on web security and video on the web and all kinds of things like that. We have other events that are purely social, where we go to National Mechanics or Triumph or another great bar and drink beer and talk. And so that's fun. All our events are free. We get sponsorship for those things. We usually have pizza and something to drink and so forth. And most of them take place at Huntsman Hall at U of P in the evenings, typically Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So go to panma.org, check us out. It's something that we think is very helpful to people in the community. It's all volunteer organization. None of us get paid to do any of this. I'm also active in the Philadelphia Area Computer Society, which is the oldest user group in the country, which is pacsnet.org, PACSNET.org. I won't spend a lot of time on that because that's a little off focus, but it's an interesting group of people that started out in 1976 with those Keith Kit, build your own computer with a soldering gun type people, and it's evolved over the years into, you know, a much more digitally oriented group. Okay, so that's who I am. This is a demonstration site. It does not have a lot of content because its intent is just to demo concepts. And it purports to be a club called American Wheels for people who like the cars of the 1950s, which is something I like. And if I win the lottery, I'm going to buy a 1950 Buick, like the one you see on the front page here. I'm still waiting. This is what the 2010 theme of WordPress 3.0 looks like. I just uploaded this photo instead of those beautiful pictures that they have, you know, that they give you. Put some content on there. And what I'm going to do is take you through this site and then show you what you can do to change the way your navigation works. Now, I have an outline of what I'm going to talk about today, and I'll refer to that from time to time just to keep us on track. What we really want to do kind of is contained pretty much here. What we want to have our pages, our own pages of content. We want those pages to call up the sidebar we want, not necessarily the sidebar that it comes with. That is to say, with content that we want. We want the sidebar to look at the widget areas and grab the lists, that is the menus, that we want to appear on different pages. As you know, 2010 has a content in the middle, and then it's got a left sidebar, and right sidebar, and it's got the kind of, if you don't do anything to it, it will show you the kind of things that show up typically on a blog. You know, the RSS feeds, the comments, and the categories, and all that stuff. Well, that's fine for a blog. It also allows you to put this menu across the top. That's the default menu. And so let me call your attention to the kinds of pages we have here. By the way, this is running locally on XAMPP, so it's not like I can refer you to a website somewhere. There's the home page, and you see we put here resources, and these are links supposedly to things that anybody who has one of these old cars would want. Body shops, car transporters, doesn't matter what brand of car you have, you might be interested in these things. And then there's the general control area of the website. And the same thing would hold true if you go to the blog. You pretty much see the same sidebar. And same thing would be on contact, on about. But if you go to the Chevrolet page, you really don't want to see all that general stuff, or you don't want to see all the only general stuff. You want to see stuff about Chevys. Well, obviously the content is going to be about Chevys. But here we have the resources, the general stuff that anybody might want, of course. But here we have information that's very specific to the Chevys. So we have Chevy models and Chevy engines. Well, all right, that's pretty cool. And then we say, well, let me learn something about the Chevy V8 engines. Well, in that case, you're going to want to see information. We're going to drill down, right? And we want to see, I don't have a picture of it, but we're going to want to see sidebar that relates to that. So we have the general stuff, of course, and we figure, well, you might want the models there, and you might want this. But here are specific, now we're really drilling down into some very specific information that was not accessible from the home page and doesn't and need to be. So that's what we're going to do. Now, obviously, this could be adaptable if you had a site on musical instruments and you wanted to talk about the French horn, and then maybe there's 14 kinds of French horns. I don't know, but you could drill down like that. Now, when you're planning your site, probably all know this already. The first thing you want to do is kind of plan out what you want the site to look like in terms of its information architecture. That is, what goes where. So a lot of people use 3x5 cards and lay them out on the table. And so you want to have an idea of how the content is going to work with your menuing system, because while you can change this, of course, later on, it's better off to start out with at least an idea of how this whole thing is supposed to be laid out. So you might have, products, about us, contact, and so forth. That leads you to a page. Now you have a products page. Okay, that you want this menu here, and you have an idea of where you're going, so you're not trying to do this on the fly. If your whole page is if your whole site is 10 pages, this is a whole lot less critical. But probably it's not. It's probably going to be running up, and you're going to be adding content. You're going to be adding 50, 60. Pretty soon you've got this thing, and if you haven't thought out the menuing system, it's going to come and bite you. So think it out as much as you can, knowing that, of course, you can change it. All right, so how did we do this? Well, first of all, does everybody here know generally how WordPress works? You have a database, it's a database-driven website. You have page templates, header templates, footer templates, sidebar templates, 404 page templates, all the elements that make up a website. There are patterns or template files that can be altered. And the content of those things, you type out your content and it gets put in a database, and when somebody clicks on a link to that page, it says, oh, you want to know about Chevy V8 engines, goes to the database, grabs it, sticks it into the template, and that's what you see. So the outer part is always there. It's always created. So every page is created on the fly. So when we refer to static pages, they're not really static in that sense. They're static in that you probably don't update them that often, as opposed to your blog posts that are constantly being updated. So, if we take a look at the, let's go back and look at the what's under the hood. Not to make it bad yet. The 2010 theme, doesn't include these normally, has a number of all these files, and we'll take a look at just a couple to begin with. This is page.php. Now you may be aware that your blog posts are based on a file called index.php. Your pages are based on something called page.php. We're not going to talk about index today because we're not really dealing with a blog, because we're dealing with pages and we want them to call up sidebars. So page.php tells you this is the template for displaying all pages. So it says at the beginning, get header. Well, what's that do? Well, it probably puts the header up there. That's what it does. It pulls up the header. And then it says, if you have any content, show me the content. That's what this says. And it asks if it's the front page or not, but bottom line, come here, is it says, if you have content, give me this content. And it shows you these various, you'll see there's a bunch of divs in there, and we can fool with those divs to make them narrower or higher. We're not going to do that. That's a styling issue. But you can do that to change them. And then it gets to the end and it says, let me pull this down just a little more. Can you read that? Yeah. It says, get sidebar. What's that do? Well, puts sidebar there. And get footer, puts the footer there. So that's what page.php does. Well, okay, fine. So what you do is, the first thing you're going to want to do is create your content. Create a bunch of content. Make a bunch of pages. And we have, excuse me, we have a bunch of pages in here, which I'm logged in. I'll just show you the list of the pages. By the way, if you're ever doing one of these demonstrations, make sure the site admin link is somewhere where you can get at it, because you're going to be using it a lot, which I left off my first time I did this. Don't do that. So we have a bunch of content of various types, and you can see some of them are sub-pages of others, or because they're indented a little bit, but you get the idea. And some of them have more content than others. The point was not the content. So we have all these pages. Well, what is a menu? A menu is a list of links. A sidebar, in our case, is going to have a list of links, or a menu in it. Now, you can put into a sidebar anything you want. You can put pictures, a Twitter feed, Flickr feed, tag cloud, anything you really want, and there are widgets to do that. We're going to concentrate, for reasons of time, on lists of menus, which are links to other pages, right? We have a Chevy page and links to other things about the Chevys, or whatever you're talking about. So if we go to Appearance, this is where you find Gustow, and well, some of the good stuff. And in addition to the themes, we look at the menu page. The menuing system here will start out, all this stuff is blank, and it will say, it says this theme supports one menu. It's referring to that main menu across the top there, underneath the picture where it said Ford, Chevy, Plymouth. Okay? And it wants you to make a menu and select it. We have a drop down here, and we're using main nav menu. Well, the way you make a menu, at the beginning, all of this will be blank here, and there'll be a little plus sign here, and you click on that, and it'll say Create Menu. Well, the first thing you do, we won't use this menu, but I'm just showing you how to make one. We'll call this Test Menu. Oops, Menu. And we'll create that menu. And to the menu, we want to add some pages. Now we list all of our pages will be listed here. This is why you want to create your content first. Not every bit of your content, but enough to get yourself started, enough so that all of your areas are covered. So just for test purposes, we'll just grab this and this and this, just for the heck of it. You can click Add to Menu. And one of the other neat things is, and they'll show up there like that, you can also put in custom links, which would be to external sites. So let's suppose there were some site of general interest that you wanted your page to have there. So we could say, WordPress.org, and we can add a link to WordPress or anything to your site, and you can give it whatever label, and we'll call that WordPress.
Does that mean that's what's going to appear?
That's what it'll, yes.
Yeah, so
exactly.
If you want to put the URL in there, you can just put about WordPress or anything you want. That would be the label for what it's going to be.
We could have written, the Beatles there, and that's what it could show. And so we'll save the menu, and it will then become available to put into a widget area. So the flow of things is, we have a page, calls up a sidebar, sidebar looks at widget area contains menus, menus are pulled into the page. That's what we're going to put together. The steps I'm doing can be done in any order, but you have to do them all. So this is the order that seemed logical to me, but if you were taking notes and you found you did them out of order, it would work. You just do it. So that's how, now you have a menu. And that menu is just as real as any of the others, except we're not going to do anything with it because it doesn't make any sense in terms of the site. Okay. So having created that, we created custom menu. And I've created a whole bunch of them, which are useful in various ways, and you can see them here. And you can scroll through them. They display in alphabetical order. I don't know if you can read those names. Ford engine menu, Ford model menu, that kind of thing. Okay, so now we have menus. And I'm going to refer to my outline just so I stay on track here. We created our custom menus. Now we're going to create custom page templates. And this is going to touch on some of the things that a couple of you guys brought up earlier. When we look at page.php, I pretty much went through that, and well, let me show where that shows up. If we look at a page, and it pretty much can be any page, let's grab the About page. Okay, this is the About page, and it has no parent. It's a top-level page. And it uses the default template. In other words, page.php. That's how the default template will be. Page.php will be referred to as the default template. The default template has the one sidebar, and it looks the way you normally would see it. When we make new templates, they're going to appear in this list, and they'll be available for us to use. And when you want the page to look in a particular way, you're going to select the template that you made from that list so that that page can look different from the other pages. Look different in this case means it'll have a different sidebar, because that's all we're focusing on. It'll have the content just like the others. Okay, so that's where we're going with this. What you do is you take page.php and you copy it. Just select all, copy, and paste it and into, do this, by the way, in a text editor, any plain old text editor, not Word, just text editor, and give it a new name that is meaningful, and try to stay meaningful with this stuff. So you don't call it page 1, page 2, page 3, because that's not meaningful. You won't know what you meant by page 2 later. So I made a page called pagechevy.php, because this is going to have the Chevy sidebar.
So what were we supposed to copy?
I'm sorry?
What was we supposed to copy?
You're copying page.php. Copy the whole shooting match and paste it into a new file and rename it. Basically, you're going to rename page.php, but you want to keep the original one. Don't get rid of it, because that's your default. That's what it's referred to. At the top of the page, this is where page.php starts normally. So above that, you're going to put in this very simple PHP, and you can, copy this down. You start with less than, question mark, PHP. That tells the PHP interpreter that you are writing in PHP.
Less than what?
Less than, just see up there at the top.
No, I can't see that.
Oh, sorry. Well, it's the less than sign, the question mark, and then PHP. And then go down one line. Slash asterisk, which is a comment in PHP. It says ignore this, except it doesn't really ignore this. WordPress doesn't do that. And write the words template name, colon, the name of your new template. Okay. Now the rest of it, we're not going to change anything else because we're not fooling around with what the thing looks like or displays like. And down at the bottom, you have to think ahead a little bit here. We talked about sidebars. This is going to be a Chevy sidebar. So you're probably going to call it something like that, right? You're going to make a sidebar, and this is where I say the order of what I'm telling you doesn't matter, but you have to do them all. I could have had to do the sidebars first. We're going to refer to a sidebar called sidebar-Chevy. When you make your new sidebars, keep this in mind, the format of naming it has to be sidebar-thename.php, because you're going to put the name part here in these single quotes. PHP get sidebar goes out and gets a sidebar. In the default one, there's nothing in between those parens. So it just gets the default sidebar that's just called sidebar.php. This is going to go out and look for a sidebar whose name is sidebar-Chevy. Names don't matter. And we're not going to fool with a footer, it's going to get the default footer. So this is going to go out and look for a sidebar called Chevy. Well, that's nice. We don't have one yet. We have to make one. So, if we look at sidebar.php, whoops. This is the default. And it has in it, now, a word of caution, this is the 2010 theme. There could be some differences in the sidebar.php file in other themes. But they're all kind of going to look like this. There are two areas that the PHP code makes. First of all, there's this div. You guys are all familiar with CSS, right? You know what a div is, or HTML. Called primary. It has a class of widget area, blah, blah, blah. It makes a UL here. And this code here says, when we call this function, when we ask for a sidebar that has widgets, that's what they mean by a dynamic sidebar. This says, if there is not, you don't have to know this, but it would help if you understood it a little bit. This says not, there's exclamation point. If there is not a dynamic sidebar called primary widget area, then put this stuff in instead. And what this stuff is a search form and, let's see, an archives link and what else did I get? Oh, and the login information, the kind of stuff that you normally see, you know, on the side of a blog. Just to have some content there for default. We're not going to use that stuff, though. Not here. And then that ends, and it starts up another div, and it says, if there is a sidebar called secondary widget area, give me the stuff that's in the secondary widget area. Well, we're not going to use the primary widget area, and we're going to take the secondary one, because it's simpler, and modify it for our own purposes. So what we're going to do is, you're going to see in the one I modified for the Chevy, is I commented out that whole first section of that. But I wanted to explain to you what I was commenting out. Once you're done with it, you know that it works, you can take out the comments, delete the whole thing, so it doesn't clog everything up. But you want to kind of not do that until you're positive it'll work. Okay, so if we open up our custom sidebar, which is sidebar Chevy, right? Yes, come here. Sidebar Chevy, and you'll see here is the beginning of a commenting out, HTML comment. So that wipes out all this stuff, because we don't need it, we're not going to use it. So I knocked out everything in the primary, the reference, that is the reference to the primary widget area. And we'll look at the widget areas in a minute, so you'll see what I'm talking about. But we're leaving the reference to the second area, but we're going to change it. So instead of referring to something called secondary widget area, it's going to refer to Chevy widget area. Well, that's nice. There isn't one. We have to make it. So you can see how these pieces are fitting together. And you can start at the end and make the widget area, make the sidebar, and make the page. Or you can make the page and make the reference to the sidebar. It doesn't really matter. Or in any order. So what this says is, if there is an active sidebar called Chevy widget area, give me everything that's in it. And what everything is in it, as you can guess, is going to be our Chevy menu list. Is this making sense? Is any of this totally, am I going too fast here? Please raise your hand, because I've said this 50,000 times. It's like, I don't want to go over your heads. I want you to be able to do this when I'm done. That's what it comes down to. So we need to have a Chevy widget area for it to refer to. Now we get to the fun part. This is where you will feel really geeky, at least I did. And there's there's a file. And by the way, what I'm doing here, just so you know, I'm using a text editor to open up the files. And that's all that. I found out later, somebody said, what the heck is this? That's a text editor. That's all it is. It could be BB editor or something else, but There is a very important file in WordPress called functions.php, and it has all the PHP functions that make it do stuff. Probably you want to make a copy of this first, in case you look at your site and there's nothing on it. It means you accidentally clipped off some comma or parenthesis or something. That's okay. Nothing, you know, pencils have erasers. You can keep a copy of it. And at worst, if you really blew it up and you didn't make a copy, you can download it. And you just download it and replace what you have. No big deal. So, what we're going to do is a very small part of this. We're going to scroll down to the area where they do what's called registering sidebars. And in a way, it's registering sidebars, but it's really making new widget areas. What is a widget area? A widget area is a little drag and drop thing, very much like what you saw with the menus, where I just drag the pages over there, or click the pages over there, in which you can put functional code just by dragging and dropping. That's why they're widgets. So here, it comes with, you know, register sidebar array, and then it has the, remember you saw primary and you saw secondary by default. Well, what you do is, you take this stuff and you copy it. You start here, and you go like this, down to here, hit copy, Control C, and we're not going to use this one because, whoops. And you go down to the bottom, just give yourself a little room there, and paste it. Well, we don't want it to be called Area 2. We're going to change the names of it. In this case, because we have a Chevy area and I don't want to make two, I'm going to call this Area Cadillac. And it says, register a sidebar. Basically, this tells you, I want to make a widget area that's called something I'm referring to. And I'm going to be referring to it in that code in the sidebar that we talked about. Remember it said Chevy widget area? Well, I need something called Chevy widget area. I have one of those. I'm making a Cadillac widget area. I already got that when I'm using it as an example. So you take out the word secondary. This is not real hard, you know. Cadillac. And we're going to change it in 3 places, basically. Okay? And then save it. Don't rename it, just save it. And if stars are aligned on me today, when we go to the widget area, there's the primary widget area, which you saw in the functions PHP referred to. There's the secondary widget area you saw referred to. There's the Chevy widget area I said I didn't want to duplicate. And there is the Cadillac widget area that we made. And it just appeared because all we did was change those names. You know, it's not knowing any PHP, you just have to know what to change. So now we have, we don't need the Cadillac area, we're going to use it. So now we have widget areas to refer to. Well, that's really nice. So we go to the Chevy widget area, and you'll find, so let's go to the Cadillac, because this is blank. Whoop, that says, I guess I already did that, never mind. Let's delete that, because I want you to see. It would be blank when you made a new one. There won't be anything there. Into which one can drag a widget. And one of the widgets that we're going to be using is called custom menu. So you can just drag that menu down here, like this, stick it in there. You can give it a title if you want. And now you'll be able to select all of the menus that you've made, which is why I made we had you make the menus first. So all of the menus you want. Now presumably we would have made a bunch of Cadillac related menus. But we'll just grab the first one and see. And you save it. And now it is available for your sidebar to grab. So, you made a page template, renamed it to page your name or something. You changed the reference to the sidebar to sidebar your name. We took the sidebar code, we changed the code in the sidebar so that it was looking not for primary or secondary widget area, but your name widget area. Then we went to functions.php, copied the widget area creating code, changed the name, and it created a widget area. So now the sidebar has something to grab, the page has a sidebar it can display, and that's how you get what we saw in the demo site. Voila. So we have, oh good, we have time. That is the basis for making a customized navigation system. That's the basic stuff. Now, you can put more than one menu into a sidebar, and in fact we did, because this sidebar has got two menus in it. Now it's very obvious that there are two menus because each one has a title. You saw there was a title field. You don't have to put anything in there if it would be redundant because of the content or something. But for instance, on the home page, if we wanted to say, put a search bar, and there are many widgets there that are really neat. People write these things all the time. If we went to the widget area, excuse me, this is the primary widget area, which is being referred to by page.php, which is our default, right? That's on the home page. Remember, it saw the resources for body shops and car transporters and all that stuff. And the control area was login and RSS feed and all that stuff. We could say, well, you know, it would be really nice if we had a search area there, and there is a search bar. And we can put it in the middle, we can put it on top, let's put it on top. We'll save that. And when we go back to the home page, there's a search bar. A minute and a half, no coding. It's an amazing system. So if you are, I would tell people who aren't on 3.0, this is reason enough to go on 3.0 just by that. So you can also do this in the footer. You can apply the same principles if you, for instance, were perfectly happy having one sidebar or maybe a couple on the side, but you wanted different things in the footer. You could apply the same principles to the footer and maybe less intuitively, the header. So if you wanted a header, if you wanted to get header to call up a different header, and you had fooled around with the way it displays the pictures or whatever, you could make a new header called header, my header, and have it get header and plug in my header there. And you can create that in the same way you created these other widget areas. And the same thing will appear. Questions? Yes?
When you name your menu, do you have to use one word?
I used something underscore something.
Yes.
I'm not sure whether it'll let you put spaces in there. I haven't tried that. But generally the convention is don't have spaces in names, so I don't, but I can't say it wouldn't work if you did. You should make things as meaningful as possible. Sometimes they get a little long. But, okay. Other questions? How many how many people have a WordPress site that they are playing with, working with, that's real, it's live, okay, what do you do with it? What kind of site is it?
It's
I'm sorry, her.
I write posts.
Oh, it's a blog.
It's a blog, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. And,
Not sure of the question.
well, no, I just wanted to know.
I play around.
Okay.
I put up a header. I have a thesis, and I'm no pro, but I'm a writer, so I write.
Okay, all right. Okay. And I was, if you're using the thesis framework, this would you would be using somewhat, you would using their functionality to change.
Yeah, I
stuff like
noticed
that.
some stuff I don't think I have, but you're giving me ideas of things I can search for and play with. I mean, I need to go to the next step, so this is clicking.
Good. The thesis, what she's referring to, there are frameworks out there that are, what's a framework? Framework is an apparatus of code that that's WordPress supports, or supports WordPress, I guess, and it enables you to plug in themes and gives you a great deal of drag and drop functionality to alter the appearance and layout of your site without doing any coding. It has its own learning curve, but it's a lot of what you would do in Thesis. Thesis is a very big commercial one. Genesis is another one, and there's a couple others that are open source. Connie, what are those?
Thematic and hybrid and sandbox, WP framework, one, and then presentation on the other.
Okay.
And those are all free and open, and they have big communities supporting them.
And what they let you do is a lot of this stuff even simpler. So all that drag and drop bit with putting the pages in the menus, you can do that with you can pick the sidebar without having to go into the functions.php page, and it'll just, if you've made sidebars, it'll let you make sidebars and then select them. That's one thing it'll do. And I've used Genesis a little bit, but not terribly much, but it's pretty powerful. Yes, sir.
This kind of goes along with navigation, but also with links. One thing with my company where we have problems with what we like to do is we have these huge long links and we need to make short links out of them. And then you can kind of do that with perma links by like making the shorter link names. But right now I'm trying to find out a way that I can just like save like you have a post or a page like down in your sub navigation that you can't really see from the main navigation. You can just do say like say Chevy.com/ then that page, like a short link to that page. Can you do that one?
Well, you can put those. I think this is answering your question. You can make you can put in an external link, customized link into your menus. If we take a look at a menu, for instance, is this? Tell me if I'm not talking about what we meant as soon as this opens up. Here we go. Menus. Okay, there's this ability to make a custom link, and presumably, and this is to great big long thing that you've run through ISGD or something to a URL shortener, so it's only 6 characters long or something.
Yeah, right now, like my company, we're still in. They're still using Dreamweaver. Like I just started the company like 3-4 weeks ago, but we're trying to like just get them more up to a CMS system of WordPress. And one of the things we're doing right now is, like I was just saying about, they have for some of the pages or files, they have huge links and they use a link shortener to get the shorter links. One of the other things they do is they make it just another index file just for a redirect, so using a redirect as a short link. But what I'd like to do is to see if we can do it with WordPress, or we can just use make WordPress make a shorter link to that page or that post or.
But this is a page on your site that you have created. It just happens to have a real long.
Yeah.
Okay, if you made the page in this method, and presumably, I mean, there's no reason why it wouldn't show up as one of these pages, right? Mm-hmm. And then would it not work if you simply checked off the page and hit add to menu and it would wind up on the menu you wanted, regardless of the length of would that not work?
Isn't there a shortener on the page?
Yeah.
When you go to the page, isn't there a link shortener?
If you go to pages and a page pops up,
I mean, I would think if you made a page, however long its reference was, and it's on your page and it still has an enormously long reference? Or is it just
it's
like
not in the main navigation. Say it's like, we have this thing called a site guide for our salespeople to go and take a shorter link to send out to a client. So instead of giving a client some long link, they have short links, which right now we're making a subfolder in a root directory. In that subfolder, there's an index.asp, which has a redirect. So pretty much we're making a simplified version of a redirect and a short link. So
you want to send the short link
to our clients, yeah. So I want to know if we can go, say we make a page in WordPress, and we just, using permalinks, using some of the feature maybe I'm not finding out about right now, just to make a shorter link.
Can you go to pages real quick on yours?
You mean like tiny URL or bit.ly or something like that, but something not that?
Yeah.
Something different.
Just
I mean,
open up
you can do
a
that when I
page.
do a regular post, there is a link shortener right in the.
Right there where it says pages, just open up a page.
Yeah, if you,
And then go to edit.
well, if we look at this one, for instance.
On top up there where it says edit, right there beside permalink,
Yeah.
you should be able to change whatever you want to change in there.
Well, you can't, I mean, you can
You
change
can't
the
change
page
first part.
reference.
But it's not gonna help him, if he's actually sending the link out to a client, it's an external link to a client, it's not gonna make a difference. You still need to be able to,
It has to be that
it has
page.
to resolve to a location, but, I mean, if you guys are, all you have to do is just put in a simple, you can JavaScript or redirect right into whatever you want to do. I mean, there's a really simple redirection, you just run and you're done. And I don't know, what platform are you guys running on? Is it a Windows or is it a Linux?
I believe it's Windows-based.
If it's Windows, if you guys running on IIS 7 or above, there's a really simple redirect right inside the IIS you can do. It's really simple.
All right.
So all
There you
you
go.
need is just a different DNS name, so domain name or something you want to shorten it up, and it'll automatically redirect for you.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Good. Great.
Don't complicate your life.
Yeah, it's very short.
That'd be nice.
Complicate anything else for me.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying. Keep it simple and
Any other questions? I think we have it's either 3 or 7 minutes. I don't. We stopped at 2:50. Is that right? We have time for a little bit more. Was there anything we have? There were some questions about page templates and wanting to make them look different.
Yes.
Okay.
That usually could be done by like some changes in your CSS.
Exactly right.
But since I'm not really super proficient with that yet, I want to be able to do it right on there.
Here's page.php, right?
Uh-huh.
And you'll notice that ignoring the PHP, which we'll do for just a minute, you have a div here called entry content, and you have that's within content, which is within container. You're familiar with that, like basically boxes within boxes, other things like that. Well, they are styled by another key. Another key file in there called style.css, and this is and what I did here, all I did was copy the original one because I knew at some point I would mess up the one I was working with and I wouldn't be able to put it back. So if you take style.css, it's very long, it's got a whole lot of content in it, but it shows you all the styles that are applied to all of the divs of various IDs and classes on your pages, so that when you could just use the find function to find the div or class or whatever of interest. And if you look there, it'll say, entry content is, so wide or so has some characteristic. You can change those.
Okay, just for us that, I'm better with the design aspect instead of the code aspect, and I need to keep coming back to the code. Is there any way we can do that without having to get heavy into the code?
You're going to need to use some CSS if what you want is things that look different from something else. I mean, if your default box is, Ed, goes from centered and it's got the sidebar next to it, and you want it to be half its width and you want another one like it next to it, you're going to have to make divs that instead of being 550 pixels wide are 300 or whatever, 275 pixels wide, and are positioned such that they sit side by side. So you're going to have to know some CSS to do that. You can't, to my knowledge, drag and drop those things. I don't know if the frameworks will let you do that, but if what you want is instead of sidebar, great big box of content, sidebar, little box of content, you're going to have to make those. You can make those. I mean, you can make them and stick them in where they appear in the code. And when you see the results, if it's not what you want, you change it. But I don't know any way to do that without fooling with the style.
Basically what I've done so far is I just created a box in Illustrator and save them to the web as a JPEG, and then upload them into the media library, and then take those boxes and make them links to where they needed to go. That's what I've done so far.
I mean, it would look like it's a great big picture.
Right. But
I mean, that'll work, but you don't. But you have in effect an image, and your content is literally hard-coded in the image.
Right.
Which that's all right for a little bit of stuff, but a search engine can't see that, for instance.
Right.
Now you might not care because it's.
But I can just put like a little tease on there, and then you click on the image, and it goes to the page that gives all the details.
Oh well, sure. I mean, if that's okay with you, you can do that. But at some point, if what you truly want is two boxes sitting side by side, is that you have an image superimposed on one box that's divided down the middle, and it looks like it has two columns. Right? If that's okay with you, fine. I mean, a search engine can't see that JPEG, and it isn't. If you wanted to change the content of those two columns, you would have to go into Illustrator and redo it. So somebody couldn't come along and type it, which you could if it was. It's an image content. It's not actual text content. Is that what you're saying?
I just basically, with the party, let's say Halloween party tonight, I just created something, put it on there, and then created a link to the actual page.
That'll work. It has its limitations, though.
Right.
But it doesn't mean you can get out of coding. Yeah. At some point, if you're going to really do this, at some point you got to at least do some CSS. You don't have to fool with the PHP. You're going to at least play around with the CSS to move stuff around. Yes, ma'am.
So where did you get this editor?
Oh, this editor is just one of a million free. I just searched for free text editor. This is called Arania. It's some guy out on the West Coast.
So if I just say,
you can use Notepad if you had to.
Notepad++.
Notepad++, EditPad Pro.
They're all
Text
lots of
Strangler, I think in Mac you can do, it'll,
Notepad, I use Notepad++, but they're all basically the same thing.
feel free.
Yeah. I mean, if you Google free text editor,
Yeah.
you come up with
Yeah, and it's really whatever you like. But they all look and feel pretty
Before we
much the
do
same.
it in a Word though?
The nice thing about
Oh,
it
yeah.
is
Stay away
the
from
language
Word dumps
will
all
be
this
so
formatting.
Well, not page, it'll line it up for you, like, it's not as basic as Notepad.
But he was doing, what he was referring to, like in Illustrator, wouldn't an easier way to do that? Because I don't know,
These other places you're saying you don't.
what he does in
Well, no, you still
Illustrator,
need to type the
do you
code.
copy and
But
paste it
it'll
in
do the
there?
alignment for you.
He's making a JPEG and making it in content.
I would think that maybe an easier way to do that, because I know what he's saying, instead of like guessing what it's going to look like. Could you just go in Dreamweaver and do a split view, and in this way, when you're creating that
We
box,
have one conversation at
you'll
a
have
time.
your code there.
where's okay, just that.
Good point, good point.
Sorry.
But the bottom line is, no, you can't, you're either working in WordPress or you're going to work in Dreamweaver. I don't really.
Right, but like when you're creating that box in Illustrator, like I haven't used it as a link to go into something interactive. What do? You export it as a JPEG or?
No, I go into Illustrator, create what I want to create, and then save it for web, and then save it as a JPEG.
Okay.
And then you go back into WordPress, you upload it into your media library,
Okay.
and then put it on the page you want to put it on, and then you highlight it, you go up to link, and link it to wherever you want to link it to.
Because I suggested, without knowing, to read it, if you went into Dreamweaver and created that box and looked at it in a split view, then you have all your dimensions and stuff, and I was wondering if there was a way, like what you were doing, where you could like maybe copy and paste the code that you get from the size, not the image itself, but take the code when you're in the split view, because you got your box.
You have
And then
a
on the
copy
other
and
view-
paste the code
Into Word.
into WordPress.
Yeah, would that work? Because then at the same time, you're
That sounds, to me, from my point of view, that sounds really complicated. I would rather go to WordPress and make a div and say it's so wide and so high and be.
Or just use Illustrator to preview the slides.
Let me not, just not to cut you guys off, but this is really specific to something really, like, I'd be glad to talk to you outside, but let's, a little more general. We only have, we don't really have. Are there any other questions that I can defer to somebody else to answer? Okay. Well, it's 10 of 3. I believe this is the end of it. Thank you all very much. I appreciate your coming here.